Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the break, and I also hope you made some new connections with other delegates on the platform, or maybe even built on your existing ones. Our next panel discussion is upskilling existing teams and preparing the future workforce. Now, it is critical for public sector organisations to invest in their workforce, as we've been hearing already today, as upskilling will remain at the heart of the response to the global crisis. The pressure is immense, given the desire to move quickly to online public services, and we will see upskilling continue to be an important theme as when planning how this public sector actually builds back better, something we've heard a lot about recently. So how do we actually achieve this? Well, we need to consider what leadership qualities are needed, something we've touched on in the first discussion. Also, the challenges faced when trying to upskill existing teams, and of course, the vital steps required to attain all these goals. So to discuss this topic further, I'm delighted to say I've got another great panel, and they are Simon Pollen, who's the strategic resourcing and talent acquisition manager, Richmond and Wandsworth Council. We also have James Green, who's the chair of the board, Institute of Leadership and Management. Lorraine Powney is Mansfield District Council's Talent and Skills Manager, obviously for Mansfield District Council. And hopefully we'll have with us Dr. Anthony Manning, who's the Dean, University of Kent, Digital and Lifelong Learning. So hello to the panel and welcome to you all. Nice to have you with us. Of course, audience, don't forget, if you want to be included in the conversation, please use the Q&A function and we'll do our best to get those questions answered as part of that. So let's welcome our panel properly and let's start with the questions that we have. So Simon, let's start with you, because what actions do you think need to be put in place to upskill the team? What is the main thing for you? That's to Simon. Simon, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear my response okay?
We can now, yes.
Okay. Good. So I think obviously the last few years has been quite challenging with hybrid working. As you can see, I'm in the office today and encouraging my team, the recruitment team, to come in as much as possible, so once or twice a week. I think there's a number of things that we can do in terms of upskilling the team. So there are so many tools that there are an awful lot of avenues like this one. So I'm encouraging the team to be more proactive and less transactional. So to take a bit of ownership, to be more project focused, and to upskill themselves a little as well. So there are we can talk about LinkedIn. There's LinkedIn Learning, which is a fantastic tool. There's being more project focused, getting yourself involved with various projects within our organisation, which is Richmond and Wandsworth Councils. So there are opportunities to be a speaker. There's opportunities to present. We're running a recruitment and selection training course that we've made mandatory for all of our hiring managers that want to sit on an interview panel. And this course goes through in great detail the importance and the different elements of ED&I within the recruitment process. And within that, I'm really encouraging my team to observe this course and then bit by bit start to help present the course, because you're making those key relationships with hiring managers. You're upskilling yourself in terms of your own confidence, presentation skills, and you're learning as you go. So there's a lot of internal courses as well that they can subscribe to. I'm doing one at the moment around neurodiversity, which is fascinating. I'm encouraging my team to put their hands up and to sit on interview panels themselves. So I think there's a lot that recruitment teams can do, particularly in the public sector, where they can lean on what the private sector are doing. So sort of dragging themselves now into the 21st century, being a bit more creative in terms of advert writing, the use of video. So there's so many different projects and things that the team can do to be less transactional, take more ownership, and be more project focused.
This sounds really good, and obviously it requires time. What is the appetite like then, Simon? What are you finding? People, are they keen to get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I think initially there can be some sort of nervousness there, because, you know, if you haven't presented, or you haven't dealt with sort of senior stakeholders before, that can be a bit scary. But I think, as with all these things, there's always that slight reluctance, and it's just once you dip your toe in just a little bit and you think, well, it's not actually quite as scary as I first thought, and before you know it, we've got experts that are running away with things and coming up with their own ideas and being really creative and thinking, wow, you know, we could actually think about evaluation reports and think about our candidates and our hiring managers, also our stakeholders, and get every bit of recruitment done with some real good feedback. And of course, it's nice to have a pat on the back, but the real key is, what could we do better? What can we learn? So there's an awful lot that my team and others within the organisation, I think, can learn just by being a little bit bold, a little bit brave, and trying something new. And what first seems scary turns out to roll into something huge, and will set off in motion, I think, a whole new way of working, which is outside of your sort of role responsibilities and your job profile, because I think nobody really wants to be restricted to just what some words are on a bit of paper. You know, you want to have it unlimited and open. So I think it's that freedom to actually, as I say, take that ownership, be creative, and make your own role what you will.
Well, that certainly sounds encouraging. Now, I know one of the things that is indeed helping or indeed hindering is, of course, technology. And James, we know technology is transforming how we deliver learning and development, but there are limits on how much we can rely on technology to upskill our teams. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, please. Oh. Yep, sorry. It looks like we've just lost James. What did I say about the hindering perhaps and not helping all the time? Never mind, we'll see if we can get James back. But in the meantime, let's talk to Lorraine and Dr. Anthony, because it's quite similar really in terms of apprenticeships. And Dr. Manning, I wondered how can higher and degree apprenticeships fill the skills gap that we're hearing about within an organisation?
I can pick that one up.
You, Lorraine, you could take that. Great.
I have to pick that one up.
Great.
I mean, in terms of the apprenticeship levy, as an organisation, we started using the apprenticeship levy really around the lower level apprenticeships, so the level 2s, the level 3s, predominantly in trades and customer service, business administration, multi-skilling the workforce, particularly across the trades, to make us, a one-stop shop for our customers in our tenanted properties. So that was really positive. But then we looked at planning and started to look at the critical roles for the organisation. What career pathways have we got for those critical roles? We actually decided that our levy needed to focus on funding those career pathways. So in particular, we started to look at, those professional roles, both for existing apprentices as progression routes. So it gave them, an opportunity to further step into the world of work. And also for our existing employees, so for upskilling, getting on the career pathway in readiness for those roles in the future. It wasn't just professional roles, there was also roles that we knew that would be new, those few roles that were going to be created. And how to make sure that I want my own day off route in place. I think we've got some background.
We do, Lorraine. And I was just going to say, well done for struggling on, because you were making sense, certainly to me, but I could appreciate you're hearing other things as well.
I can carry on if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that was absolutely fine. I was just wondering, what was the response when you were talking about some of these apprenticeship programs that have been taken up by current employees, as well as obviously people who wanted to start afresh. What was the response like? Was it something people were keen about?
Yeah. We're really positive, to be given the opportunity to reskill, to learn new skills. And I think particularly in the trade areas, where we'd had apprentices coming in and they were, there was sort of mentoring going off between the people that were long established in roles and new apprentices coming in who were much younger. So there was, that learning that was going off between them both, and that encouraged, people who had been established for us for quite some time to think about reskilling or upskilling their current area and moving on. Some of them were moving on in progression to higher level roles because they'd gained the confidence to do that. So I think appetite was very good for it. In areas where those people who were perhaps a little bit more lack the confidence to move on, then we would actually look at that person-centered approach, looking at what the outcome would be for them, what would be the benefit for them as well as the organisation, and obviously putting personal support in to give them the confidence. So coaching, additional mentoring from somebody else. So we did put that in place.
Yeah, which is all vital, isn't it? And obviously it helps the individual in a rounded way completely. Looks like we have Dr. Manning back with us, which is great. So welcome to you, Dr. Manning. Appreciate it's been a little bit of a trial with the technology today, but hopefully we've got you now. We're sort of into our discussion, basically, talking about upskilling the existing teams and preparing the future workforce. And the question I wanted to ask you really was about the University of Kent and how you work with employers to identify training needs and ensure courses content is actually relevant, because obviously it's a partnership, the apprenticeships, between industry and higher education. So how do you pinpoint exactly what they need?
Hello, can you hear me first of all?
We certainly can. We can.
Oh, that's great. That's a relief. As you say, I had some settling in issues with the technology, but it's great to be here now. So as you say, the very, crux and foundation of apprenticeships and the relationship between universities and employers is essential. And so what we do really is, right from the outset, when we're trying to develop an apprenticeship or degree apprenticeship through the university, we try to work as closely as possible with our employers, so that in our realization of the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are integral to the apprenticeship, and of course the key dimensions that the employers and the Trailblazer Group have embedded within that design provision in the first instance, are really integral to what we do, so that we can ensure that the degree reflects those areas. And then of course we have ongoing relationships with our employers through our apprenticeship advisor network and our account directors, as well as the educators, academics who are teaching on the program, so that we can then modify the provision and adjust the learning as and when we need to, with credit-bearing provision and also co-curricular activity, which is something we have a wealth of access to within university. So it's making sure that we are responding to the true essence of what apprenticeships are, which is bringing those key knowledge, skills and behaviours that are prized by employers into the degree, rather than the other way around. It's about making sure the degree is modern and innovative and responsive to employers' needs, rather than retrofitting pre-existing provision.
Yeah, and of course things have changed so much, haven't they, the past 2 years? So presumably you've almost got to, well, keep up with those changes, but equally. Oh, you can't hear me. Okay. Oh, all right. Well, thank you for that response so far, Dr. Manning. We'll come back to you. Hopefully we'll correct those technology problems, which leads me nicely on to James, who's back with us as well. And we were just saying, James, I mean, we've seen the problems with technology already a few times now, but it is transforming how we deliver learning and development. But of course, there are limits, aren't there, on how much we can rely on technology to help us upskill our teams. Can you hear me, James? No, it looks like technology isn't helping us, definitely, is it, at the moment? So my apologies. Right, Simon, I've got a question for you.
I'm happy to add something in there.
Okay, yeah, please do, Lorraine. Please do.
Sort of virtual learning. I think across the board, we probably all agree that it's not the complete answer in today's digital age. Technology,
sorry to say,
difficulties and experiences, to say the least. But I think also that it's about the individual, and it's when it's online learning, virtual learning, it's down to self-motivation and their personal time management. And there'll be those that are very good at that, and those that actually need support in order to do that. And I don't think that we're quite ready for that yet. And maybe never will be. It's one of those things. The other fact is that it may well not be suitable for all, but at the same time, the classroom communities, like this have given greater opportunity, but it doesn't replace the atmosphere about being in an actual classroom and being able to network with freedom. So I think there's some aspects of it that are very good. It's certainly put us in a good place over the last couple of years with the restraints that we've had. So it certainly would embrace it and keep things moving in the right direction. But there's a limitation, I think, at the moment in terms of readiness.
Yeah, well, on that point, and something perhaps for both you and also Simon, people will say they're overloaded, they're tired, they're too busy to learn. So how do we change our approach to this? Because that's key, isn't it? I mean, it has been a really difficult time.
Yeah, I agree. It has been a very difficult time, but I think it's been a difficult time for everybody. And we've all changed the way that we're working. Many of us are working from home a lot of the time, and I know I'm getting a lot of sort of family time back and able to work in a more flexible way. So I think there's pros and cons. For me, as I said before, it's about getting the public sector to be thinking about sort of catching up a bit more with the private sector and the way that we work. There's a lack of budget. Might not be able to spend money on the careers side or sort of social media campaigns, but it's about being a bit smarter, a bit more creative. So yeah, it's been tough times, particularly in we're fishing in a very small pond in social care very much in the news, under pressure, I think under appreciated sector, and there's an awful lot of contractors in that sector, so it's quite difficult for us to hire good sort of permanent staff. So we look at perhaps international recruitment in that sector, but for me it comes back to new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking. So when we're talking about our interviews now at Richmond and Wandsworth, we are using ED&I questions, so equality, diversity and inclusion focused questions that are scored on, so that we have a bank of those questions. We have diverse recruitment panels, and people will often come back to me on that and say, what constitutes diverse? So we're looking at things from a ethnicity and sex perspective. So we're looking at ensuring that it's not sort of three white men in their 60s that are doing the interviews, because very much you have this pyramid often within public sector, as in many other sectors, where at the top it tends to be white and male. So Richmond and Wandsworth, I think our organisation reflects our community very well until you get to the top of that pyramid. So these little things that we can do are actually big things, and they make a difference to the people that work here, to the people that would like to work here. And in terms of a sense of sort of self-worth and the feeling that you can actually get to the top, it's really important, I think, to make these little changes. So we've got anonymized applications, use of video within your adverts is really important, because I think if you have that authenticity, it doesn't have to be rehashing an advert, but you have that authenticity from somebody doing the role that can say, look, this is the mission, this is why we want you to join, and it's much more inspiring if you see that in person. So there's lots of little tweaks and little things, I think, that together can make a big difference. I may have strayed slightly away from your question there, Samina.
No, that's fine. And I'm glad that you mentioned about obviously representing the communities that you serve, because that is key, and certainly something we're hearing a lot about more and more. I'm just going to check that both James and Dr. Manning can hear us. So James, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Brilliant. And so
Great.
can Dr. Manning. Superb. Okay, let's bring you both in then. Brilliant. Firstly, James, we talked about technology, but I was just wondering if you think we need to look at upskilling, or do we also need to invest in reskilling and cross-skilling our teams? And I think a question has come in around that, about how we manage the expectation of recruiting managers when moving from transactional to project-based approach. So again, all around this whole issue of skilling, but in its various forms. What are your thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. Apologies for the technology problems. Yeah, I think from my perspective, upskilling and cross-skilling and just generally improving the skills of work we need to do all of them. Has grown in importance over the years, and particularly accelerated by the pandemic. We need to be more agile now. We need to be more adaptable, and we need to be able to pivot better. So when you've got those cross skills where you can suddenly jump into another team and help out with their demand is, then as a business, you're going to be better off. I think in the area of digital data and IT, which has already been talked about, but I couldn't hear, is obviously a key area of focus. And what I've found in my own organisation, so I work for the Gambling Commission, that's my full-time job, and separately I'm chair of the Institute. But in the Gambling Commission, I've seen on the digital side, we've got a bespoke team that highly qualified in that, but it's about raising the level across the whole organisation as well, so that they can harness the benefits of data and digital. And then I think when you look at leadership and management, again, accelerated by the pandemic, and looking towards the future, it's the human side of leadership. It's very much having leaders able to respond to changes, be able to communicate, to influence, being able to make effective decisions, all the normal things of leadership, which as leadership and as the world becomes harder and more complex, then leaders need to be more skilled, and those skills problems. And so it's a balance of upskilling and cross-skilling, I think.
It's interesting what you say about the human skills, because we heard that as well in our previous discussion. In terms of what they actually are, I wonder if all of you would like to comment on that, because we talk about these as a general thing, don't we? Skills, human skills. Just spell out for us what they are. I wonder if, Dr. Manning, do you want to start with that? And then perhaps Lorraine, could you answer those, please?
Sure. For me, if we're talking about human skills, it's about how we relate the key skills of our profession to the ways in which they need to be applied to solving problems that are associated with our particular work, but also how we bring people with us in the teams that we necessarily need to work in to get those problems solved. So all of those aspects in terms of key knowledge, skills and behaviours, working with teams in our immediate locality, collaborating externally with strategic organisations we need to work with, or suppliers or our customers, so that we can bring all of that together. If you don't have those those key skills in collaborating with people alongside all of specific subject skills, then the application of the work you need to do is somewhat muted or lost. So I do really think that is essential.
And Lorraine?
Yeah, completely agree. I think culture of an organisation plays a big part here. And one of the things that as a council we look to do is use the constructive skills of leadership. So looking at that humanistic encouraging, encouraging people to be the best they can be, find the best version of themselves, so giving them all of the support they need to be able to do that and do their job the best they can, and also being affiliative, doing things in a friendly, positive manner, which for leaders, that empathetic leader, which we were hearing so much of during the pandemic, I think it really comes to the fore now, and that health and well-being, it really is sort of showing at this time, definitely a need for it. But at the same time, it is about nurturing people towards that achievement, both for the organisation and for themselves. So it perpetuates them in terms of, self-worth, self-value, and growth.
Thank you. Thanks, Lorraine. I know we've talked a lot about the sort of things we need to be considering, the things we need to be encouraging. But I wonder, Simon, what are the biggest obstacles, really? When you put this in practice and you actually try and make it happen, what are the problems that you come up against?
I think some individuals are perhaps undermotivated or sort of frustrated. And perhaps they've been doing things a certain way, or they've had certain managers over the time, and they've kind of given up, in a sense, in terms of trying new things. And one thing that I try to do at our team meetings is bring in other internal and external partners. So we have people from the payroll team or the transactions team, or we have some of our external partners that we work with from LinkedIn or the Guardian Online, or I'm not plugging our external partners, but bringing in new knowledge and experience so they can tap into that and they can understand it. And we talk about cross-skilling. Well, this is an opportunity to sort of get a handle in terms of releasing those obstacles and learning and picking up new information and new skills, and that will lead to them going on secondments internally or grasping external opportunities. So I think there are obstacles, but if you're really listening and understand what issues your staff have, then you're in a good position to help them going forward.
Okay, so again, drawing on those human skills that we've heard about. James, do you think we're ready to manage Gen Z?
We need to, because it's here and now. Yeah, of course we are. And I think when how do we find time to do the upskilling? How do we find time to invest in leadership and management? Well, we need to find the time. And I think Gen Z, the post-millennials, their way of learning is different. They want sort of on-demand learning. They like interactive content. They want to learn by doing. It's really that concept of the flipped classroom where the lectures, the theory can be done in advance. They can be done at home, but it's coming into the classroom to do the active learning. And so I think for Gen Z, post-millennials, and for many of us now, it's lifelong learning. So you've got the tools and resources to access learning when you need it, that sort of social learning, jumping in and doing a course that just meets that specific need of what you're doing at the time, learning. And you've got that sort of lifelong learning. So you learn, relearn, unlearn, that whole cycle, so that you can be effective in the workplace. And I think, Gen Z, millennials want to dip in, dip out, and more of that lifelong learning approach than structured formal courses.
And you think that's possible? That is, because there is a certain amount of fatigue, isn't there, at the moment, and people do feel they've had enough to a certain degree. It not just obviously in the public sector, in all sorts of industries. It's getting them back into feeling that this is actually worthwhile doing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, learning is should always be worthwhile, and so just providing the opportunities for people to get the learning opportunities they want that fit their needs, whatever stage of their career development.
Lorraine, I think you wanted to say something then, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I was just going to you know, absolutely support what James said there. It is about, we are on a lifelong learning journey. And, you know, if we're embedding that and changing our practices, you know, to meet the demands of the new generations, rather than sticking to the old ways, I think then, yes, we've got every chance of succeeding and making sure that we, you know, future-proofing those jobs and those future leaders, you know, by staying on track with the current trends and making sure we are fit for purpose.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. I'm just going to read out a question which has come in. And this is for you, Simon. It says, how have you managed the expectation of recruiting when moving from transactional to project-based approach? Now, I know we sort of touched on that, but I don't think we fully answered it. So it's coming again. So meaning, can we answer it?
So the expectation of recruiting, having moved from transactional,
transactional
to project-based.
Project-based approach. As we all know, recruiting managers want the process to be as quick as possible. So it's around that. I can't see the rest of it.
No,
I'll be honest.
That's fine. I get it. I think the question is really saying, you know, how can you do both? Because there's so much volume, there's so much demand. How can you have the same quality when you've got your advisors and assistants focusing on various projects? I feel actually that this is a sort of two-way thing. It's a two-way relationship. So it's about educating hiring managers and senior staff to understand that this is a partnership, and that we work together. And if they understand better, you know, not necessarily to go to sort of agencies to do their own thing, to work closely aligned with our internal team and to understand what we can offer, how it saves money, how it adds value, how if we're on the same message and the same point. So these projects, whilst they are, I guess, taking advisors and assistants away from that transactional side, they're also making that transactional side easier, because the projects all tend to be related and focused towards recruitment in some way. So it may be, you know, showing managers how to do a good video. It may be encouraging them to join the recruitment selection training course. You know, it could be, you know, something that they've come up with themselves. But I think that if your team, if they're a recruitment team like mine, or it could be any team, if they feel more motivated, that they've got that, I keep using the word ownership, but you know, if they've got that trust and that flexibility and freedom to make their role rather more interesting and more holistic, then the core work will sort of take care of itself. To be more motivated to do that as well, because you're taking them out of a pigeonhole, and you're entrusting them and encouraging them to be the most that they can be. And part of that may be, you know, get some work experience working with another team. I've got 3 out of 10 of the teams since when I started 18 months ago who are on secondment in other teams. Hopefully they'll come back having learned more, but if they don't, great. It's about constantly learning new skills, and comes back to the lifelong learning concept. So yes, going from transactional to projects does sort of take away a little bit in terms of managing that volume, but at the same time, I think you'll pick up skills that will be for the betterment of the whole team, and the volume piece will become easier because new skills that you've learned, if that makes sense.
Certainly does. Thank you for that. Dr. Manning, what would you say to an employer or an employee who wants to find out more about degree apprenticeships? Well, you know, we're nearly at the end of our time, but this is what it's all about, isn't it? Getting those skills. So what would your advice be to them?
Absolutely. Well, certainly reach out to us. We're, you know, a very friendly bunch, experienced in talking to people about their learning options in a range of ways. But particularly, you'll be aware that employer engagement is something that's, you know, increasingly important for universities for obvious reasons, because of our shared focus in this area of lifelong learning and the overall shared responsibility respond to the government's skills agenda. We're coming at it from different areas in a sense, but we have the same goals in mind, and increasingly there's a lot of expertise in universities that can respond to this, and we're as keen to learn from employers as we are to respond to employers' needs. And it's really very much a symbiotic relationship, as I tried to describe earlier, in that for degree apprenticeships to work effectively, they have to realise key learning objectives that have been developed trailblazer group that identify what the learning needs to entail, and it then is the degree to respond to that in a way which brings such an exciting level of innovation and dynamism to university education, as it should, because it shouldn't be the tail wagging the dog. It should be the other way around, and this is the kind of lifeblood of ensuring that happens. So I think our discussions with our employers are just as important as our co-creation activity with our students and apprenticeships, in making sure that what we do is fresh, sufficiently responsive, and providing those all important skills for the workforce in the future. So we're reaching out all the time to try and start those conversations ourselves. But if you feel you haven't yet had that opportunity, we'd love to hear from you to see what we can build for you and how we can respond to your needs.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Manning. We have got just under 2 minutes left to go. So we started off by saying we're talking about upskilling existing teams and preparing the future workforce. I wonder if each of you could just give us a little sort of couple of lines of advice to people who are listening today about what they should be doing, what they should be thinking about right now. So Lorraine, can we start with you, please?
I think from our perspective, employee upskilling is important. It boosts staff satisfaction, helps with retention, and, enables that future proofing. So understand your workforce profile, understand the needs of the organisation, and look at where the gaps are. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Simon?
I just keep it simple and short. I'd say just listen, ask questions, understand motivations, support, and gain trust. And through that, you will help to understand where that person needs to go on their journey to support them in their upskilling.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Dr. Manning, I know you gave a very passionate speech there just about talking how you would encourage employers and employees. I wonder if there's just a couple of sentences you can add to that.
So, I mean, this space, lifelong learning in general, and more specifically apprenticeships, is really a great opportunity for multi-pronged development within an organisation for existing workforce and new workforce, and for a really great level of innovative collaboration with universities, which improves higher education and employability focused education for everyone involved. So I would encourage employers, future apprentices, to really get involved, get in touch, approach your HR if you haven't already got an opportunity. And if HR or learning and development are unsure as how to proceed, get in touch with your providers. Certainly University of Kent is ready and willing to respond and talk to you about how we can help you with your needs.
Brilliant. We have been convinced. Panel, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, all of you. So Lorraine, James, Simon, I know who we haven't got with us at the moment, and of course, Dr. Manning, thank you all very much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to our audience as well for asking some questions. We are now going to have another break, and hopefully we'll have some more thought-provoking conversations to come. It is also your opportunity to discover our PSE365 platform, and of course our digital marketplace and on-demand content is very worth looking at. So enjoy that, enjoy the break, and we'll see you for our next session at 11:35. Thank you.